are live. Ladies and gentlemen, the ever-anticipated Thursday night 8 p.m. live stream, Weather Center Live. It is March 21st already, 2024. We have an abundance of information we need to relay to you guys, and we're going to talk all about it tonight. It's going to be somewhat of a fast-paced, action-packed live stream. We're going to be flipping in and out of AORs, I will say. We're going to start here in the southern United States. We're going to go up north. We're going to look at the big picture, lower 48 North America pattern. And then tonight, I want to start to finally relay a little bit of the information I've been digging up in terms of what our tropical season could look like, especially since we are now only about a week-ish or two. I want to say, what is it? Today's the 21st, Thursday. So I would say that we're about maybe 6 or 7 days away from the official locked-in point of the tropical season. So we're definitely going to start getting ready to discuss it more and more thoroughly. But let's start by saying hello to everybody. Hopefully we're getting a better turnout tonight, just like we did on Tuesday. We have a lot more information to dig in tonight. Joseph Parton, right out of the gate, buddy, thank you very, very much for the $20 super donation. Excellent way to start the stream tonight. Very, very phenomenal way. I can't thank you enough for that. It's going to go right back into this channel. I can guarantee you that. Every little bit that we can collect on the channel, we're definitely going to put it right back into it just to provide you guys with that much better content here in the long run. I was actually talking with somebody on Instagram who should be joining us here on the live stream tonight, that the faster we can get this page to grow, the faster I can get to fully dedicating myself to each and every one of you guys, because that's the long-term goal. I want to step away from everything else going on in the background outside of obviously my meteorological degree and dedicate myself to serving you guys and making sure I provide you with the utmost best quality content that I can provide you guys in the weather sphere. But let's see who we got here. The chat's already coming alive. I love to see it. Kevin, howdy from Tallahassee. Javiota, Maria, welcome in. Nice little tornado emoji. Mr. USA, woo! Good to see you. Zenful, hello there. Yvonne, thank you for joining us. Mick and Marley, welcome in. Thank you very much. Super Charas, good to see you. Let's see who else. Ethan's Life, hello, hello. Good to see you. PM, we do indeed have a flood watch for southern Florida. They may have updated that. We'll take a look at that here in a moment. Daniel Lawson, good to be back. Ready for some rain in Tampa? Absolutely, it's going to happen. It looks like the rain amounts are going back and forth, though. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to try to dial it in just a little bit more tonight. Scott Patton, hello there. Who else we got? Yorkie Terrier, Alal XD, hello there. Twister Chaser, number 1, thank you very much for joining us. If the dew points are a few degrees higher on Sunday, that'll be a wild day for severe weather. Nam is saying low 50s, and Nam does underestimate moisture for whatever reason. I might chase. Alfalfa, where are you looking? Are we talking in the central southern plains or down here in the southeast? Because we're definitely going to talk about that as well. I've been seeing a lot of conflicting reports about what's going to happen in the central plains, and even some of my preliminary thoughts are being misconstrued. What I'm saying in terms of next week, because we do have a designation out there, Storm Prediction Center does have us highlighted for a 15% risk, I believe, on days 4 and 5. I'm starting to see social media come alive with this threat. Multi-day millions under the gun for severe weather, and I'd say, let's calm down a little bit. We got to investigate a little, because right now we just had the resurrection of winter, as everyone's calling it. Everyone was going to the wall crazy, hyping this return of the polar air. Some folks are going as far as saying it was a return of Arctic air, and it's like, calm down, it's not that serious. This type of stuff happens during the spring all the time, especially since we just crossed the threshold into spring. We're going to have some cool, cold weather still lingering around. Snow is not outlandish. So with that being said, we're going to talk about why it is I'm a little on the fence about this being a spectacular severe weather outbreak. Do I think we're going to have some severe thunderstorms? 110%. It's going to happen. It's definitely going to happen. We have all the synoptic triggers and mechanisms in place. Is it going to be as extreme as what we saw and covered here on the channel about a week and a half ago? That part I'm very up in the air about, and I'm already hearing some folks comparing it to that, and I don't feel comfortable saying that, realizing where we are in terms of the atmospheric setup across the country, and then when we begin to narrow it down to what this system is going to do and what ingredients it's going to have to tap into. But first, let's get the ball rolling. I'm not joking when I say we have a really big itinerary. We have a very lengthy itinerary to get to tonight. We're going to try to cover it all. So This is what we have going on right now, and so far our forecast is more or less verifying. Again, we have our first area of low pressure right in through here. You can see it plain as day spinning around, helping to agitate a little bit of the severe weather action that we've had ongoing out there in central northern Texas. We have had a few severe thunderstorm warnings, some large hail reports out there. Luckily, not enough of a rotational component for these storms to produce tornadoes, but we've definitely seen a lot of high winds and some isolated instances of very, very large hail, and that's because we are back within the cold sector. We are poleward of our subtropical jets screaming across the south. It's been there for a long time. So we already know where that is. We can kind of more or less, we don't even really need to draw it at this point. It's just been out there since the middle back into last year. And as such, we have our two separate vortices we've been highlighting both here on YouTube and on the TikTok. We have a secondary low pressure system that's trying to develop a little bit further down to the south over the central Gulf of Mexico. Very, very, very good convective signatures here. It's actually tapping into those loop currents down there in the Gulf of Mexico. I definitely think that that's going to help to intensify some of the thunderstorm activity we are seeing down there. And I have something very, very interesting I want to show you guys on the RRFS, the RRFS model here in a little bit that I noticed. It's going to be a wonderful testament to whether or not this model is reputable and can be trusted, because it's the only model out of all of our high-res models. I've looked at FV3, ARW, I've looked at NSSL, NDFD, HRRR, NAM 3 kilometer. The only model that is calling for what I'm going to show you guys here in a moment is the RRFS, as I like to call it, or the Rufus model, as Reed Timmer himself likes to call it. Very spectacular forecast, let's put it that way. And if this does unfold, it could very well elevate our severe risk, which is why in my TikTok update earlier, for those of you who follow me, I did mention, personally, I would go as far as to say maybe we should examine running a slight risk, a level 2 risk for just down in the extreme last 1/5 of the Florida Peninsula. I'm fully on board with our marginal risk, definitely on board with that. Thunderstorms across the rest of the peninsula, maybe a stray, moderate, or occasional severe ongoing north of where we already have it highlighted on Storm Prediction Center's charts, just because of the abundance of convection that's already flaring up out there. But if this does verify, it'll definitely change things. We're going to see stronger winds. We're going to see localized heavier rainfall, and it's definitely going to derail a lot of the preliminary forecasts that we've seen unfolding for the last 24 to 36 hours. Venture Horizon, welcome, welcome. Reed Timmer is going to chase, and he thinks stuff might happen for whatever that's worth. No, yeah, and I agree. You're definitely going to see some stuff. I just don't want to start comparing apples to oranges and say that this next event has the exact same dynamical setup to produce as expansive of the 700, 800 plus storm reports we saw with that previous system that unfortunately fatalities and millions upon millions of dollars of damage were involved. I don't think it's going to be of that caliber. We just don't have the same macro scale setup. Synoptically speaking, we have a solid setup, but we don't have it in the macro scale. And when I say that is we're not going to have the entire spring, bona fide spring warm conveyor setup. It's going to be different. Twilight Firefly, welcome, welcome. I was looking out for that username. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Let's continue on with the stream, shall we? Because we're going to get sucked into this one page and we'll be here all night. So this is our composite reflectivity looking across Dallas, Waco, Austin. You can see all this rotating thunderstorm activity along the southern side of it. This is where a large majority of our severe weather action has occurred, and out towards the Houston area. I have family down there, and I'm hoping that they weren't afflicted by this, because I did see, I believe on Radar Omega, there was a 2.5 inch hail report down there with that storm sweeping through. Fast movers, hail producers, strong wind producers. Thankfully, I've not seen a single tornado warning out of this just yet, and I really don't think it's going to happen. We don't have as robust of a synoptic setup here. We do have a broad area of low pressure, that's for certain, but again, we just don't have the same dynamics that we typically do with our bona fide severe weather spring setups or tornado outbreaks. Braden's WC, I can't forget about you, buddy. Good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. This is what we have going on for the southeast United States. So far, nothing really intense. We have some shower and rainfall activity going on for southern Louisiana. They did have us designated for a slight risk of severe weather down there across the southwest quadrant of Louisiana. Southern Mississippi could get in on some of the action. And then as we go into day 2 tomorrow and into the weekend, we're going to be primarily watching the coastal regions of the Florida Panhandle towards New Orleans, Biloxi, Mobile, Alabama, the Florida Panhandle from Pensacola about to the Tallahassee Big Bend area, and then it's going to transition down towards the southern half of the peninsula, right in through here, where I do think we could get a little bit more of a blending of severe weather parameters associated with this feature, especially if this feature next I'm going to show you guys does unfold. How close are we? Welcome in. What happened to the video? What do you mean what happened to the video? Everything still looks like we're going okay. I have excellent connection. Shania, welcome in. You're definitely going to have an interesting taste tonight as we get into the back end of this stream, and you definitely want to be paying attention because there is going to be a segment. I want to try to dedicate the last 20 minutes of this live stream if I can, try to keep us within that hour block, and talk tropics, talk some of the research that I've been heavily digging into. I was even talking to myself earlier today and talking to Willow as I was working. I'm like, Willow, Mamas, I don't know how I have the brain power to do this, to go from Navy to my own weather studies to college weather studies to regular weather forecasting to work to more. It's like, I got to give myself a pat on the back. Instead of just feeling so negative and worn out, I got to, sit here and, take a moment to say, you know what, we're doing our thing. We're grinding out. So before we get into this and the rainfall totals, I completely forgot to pull it up. I want to show you guys what it is that I keep alluding to. So we're going to pull up our RERFS A model, and we're going to come down here to the southeast. And I want you guys to look at what the simulated reflectivity looks like. It might not be there on 18 Zulu. Let's see if it is on 18 Zulu. It is on 18 Zulu. Okay, so not as impressive as on 12Z. 12 Zulu, if you guys take a look as that MCS system crosses the Gulf of Mexico, look at that at the last couple seconds right there. I'm not sure if you guys are picking up what I'm putting down, but take a look at, let me use a better color. I'm very guilty of doing that. There we go. Look at this MCV that is expected by the RFS model. A nice mesoscale convective vortex is what's prognosed or progged to form up within this MCS as it travels right over those loop currents and those warm 26, 27 degrees Celsius waters out there in the Gulf of Mexico that have only been continuing to warm. And like I said, it's very strange that this is the only model that's highlighting that, but take a look at that, a very pronounced MCV moving across the southern Florida peninsula. And like I was saying earlier, if this one iteration of the model does verify, that could change the entire rhythm of what type of severe weather we see down there, because we'll definitely see an increase in our tornado risk. We'll definitely see sustained winds, gusts around the center of circulation going up. We could very easily hit that tropical storm threshold, mid to moderate tropical storm threshold, if this does happen. If it's very interesting to note that at 18Z we still have it on there, just albeit not as impressive. There is still an MCV signature that looks to make landfall just to the south. I wouldn't say just to the south. I'm not extremely well versed with the geography of southern Florida, but that does look like it's just well off to the south of the infamous Punta Gorda, Fort Charlotte, or Charlotte Harbor, Fort Myers area, and move right over top the Miami area and weaken down as it moves over the northern Bahamas before we get another surge of very, very good convective activity. And this is echoed across a lot of our models. This right in through here is what I'm concerned about, and why I would lead to say that maybe from Palm Beach through Miami to the Keys, we might want to explore. I know that's so tiny. It's so tiny that the Storm Prediction Center, the Storm Prediction Center might not want to split hairs in this case, but I think we might have a better running at some more enhanced severe weather down there. Whether or not the MCV does take shape, I do think regardless, because of the ingredients we have in play down there and the positioning of this secondary vortice, as I like to call it, you move on over to our surface cape and you can see that even though a lot of it is lagging behind, we do get enough of it to kind of mix in down there right through Miami, Key West, into Palm Beach. It's a very small marginal area of Cape that flares up as that MCV would be rolling through, and then it very quickly washes out, enhances as it gets offshore over the Gulf Stream waters. And then we might have to watch out for some possible return flow, I'll call it return flow. It's not necessarily return flow, but the wraparound moisture that could tap back into the instability that becomes more available as this system progresses further up the mid-Atlantic coastline. So we shall see. And I'll even switch over to our surface winds, and you can see a night and day difference. I'll use the gusts, for example. And there she goes right there. You can see that MCV starting to form up, bringing in some very, very, very strong winds for areas of the central and southern Florida peninsula. And this is in miles an hour. And the max gust on this chart is apparently, you guys can't see it. My head's in the way. Let me move my head real quick. Go back to it. There we go. Right there. Now let me move my big old head out of the way up here. Move it back down to the bottom left corner. Look at the gusts max on this chart. 90 miles an hour. 90 miles an hour. I don't think we're going to get hurricane force winds. At least I hope that isn't the issue here, because that's definitely not being highlighted by any of our other models. This model could very well be out to lunch, but at the same time, the reason I even bring this up is we've had other instances of severe weather down here in the southeast to where our models are really not indicating a mesoscale convective vortex signature, and then all of a sudden, hey, what's that spin? I think within the last month now, and it's on my Instagram if you guys want to fact check me, I even shared that up towards Tallahassee, Apalachicola, with the last setup that came out of the Gulf, we had an MCV form up from it, and it moved ashore, and we saw a little bit of an additional enhancement in our severe weather activity. And so that's why I bring it up. It's still reflected at 18 Zulu. It's nothing that impressive. It might not continue to trend too much. And again, it's not on any of our other model platforms. If I come on over to the HRRR and we go down to the 18Z and we go to simulated reflectivity, for example, it's just a amalgamation of very, very bad thunderstorm activity. We don't really see much in the way of any kind of vortex signature. It remains a disorganized mesoscale convective system, MCV, but again, it looks like our strongest stuff could really try to rotate through the southern and southeast piece, I'll call it, of Florida, and then straight into the Bahamas. So we shall see what happens. PM, regardless of the pattern, though, you can get these types of developments when you have such overwhelming warm temps in the Gulf of Mexico. This is not going to happen. North Florida storm. We have this piece of breakaway energy that's headed towards the southern Florida peninsula, and that's what I'm mainly going to be keeping my eye on. Our main synoptic parent low is going to move over the southeast. It's probably going to travel somewhere through southern Louisiana, propagate up through Mississippi before turning a bit more to the east-northeast as you go through Alabama. It might miss the Florida Peninsula, not the Florida Peninsula, the Florida Panhandle, moving through interior Georgia and then up the mid-Atlantic coastline into the Carolinas. Kind of like what's alluded to here if you look at this radar signature. But we're definitely going to have to watch down here, and that actually leads me later on into the stream towards what it is that I'm worried about for that next system. Everyone's talking, and it makes me, it kind of bums me out. I don't know if anybody in here is watching from those channels or anybody else, but there's a lot of folks who are very genuinely nervous and uptight and stressed with what happened in the Midwest with Indiana, Illinois, Ohio. And there's a lot of people who are stressing out seeing all these videos, widespread tornadoes, outbreak, look out. And it's like, you don't do that. We just had a huge severe weather outbreak. That's not how you reel people back in to trust in your weather predictions. You don't go blasting the alarm like, yep, here we go again. Tremendous damage, tornadoes everywhere. People are probably not even gonna finish that sentence. But, and I don't feel like it's the same magnitude, let alone the same type of AOR. We had a couple of new people join us in the chat. Sabrina Marshall, good evening. Good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us. Weather Florida Man, thank you for joining us as well. Amanda, how bad will it be in Louisiana? Louisiana is going to dodge a large majority of the worst of it. A lot of it is probably going to be staying over the Gulf of Mexico. I do believe the Gulf of Mexico is going to aid in our convective enhancement is what I'll call it, because of how hot it is. It is very, very warm. That's part of the research I've been doing, and that research that I've been doing is going to be tailored not only to severe weather season, but also the tropical season. And naturally, I have to throw the disclaimer in there that just because the waters are hot doesn't necessarily mean that it automatically 5 hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico. But it's going to play a role in our severe weather setup for Dixie Alley in the southeast, especially areas of Texas, Louisiana, into parts of maybe Alabama, Georgia, and etc., and a little further to the north into the south and eastern periphery of where our traditional tornado alley is. But we really ought to start exploring how much enhancement could occur because our waters are outlandishly hot, and they are outlandishly hot. As a matter of fact, I have something I want to show you guys later that I saved from an article I read online. I emailed it to myself after screen capping it on my phone so I could present it to you guys. One Nation Weather, thank you very much for joining me, my friend. Been enjoying beautiful sunshine here in South Carolina the last few days. Excellent live report. Been listening quietly for the last little bit. ONW, thank you very much for joining us, buddy. Good to see you in here. I like it when the channels pop up on the in the chat feed. It's wonderful to get some collaboration going in here when it's especially worthwhile during large-scale events like this. Let's continue to move on, though, otherwise we're going to get lost in the sauce. So this here is going to be our NOAA blend, and I've noticed in the 24-hour reports, the NOAA blend has really backed off on our heavy rain threat. For the last couple of days, the NOAA blend alongside the Shref and our other Ensemble products have been showing anywhere between 3 to 5 inches for especially the SoFlo area. But in this case, if you look at our 24-hour totals, and this is echoed on our total totals, is what I'll call it, now we're looking at maybe a maximum of approaching 2 inches for the south and east corner of the Florida Peninsula, with the rest of us maybe just getting some light rain. I don't know what's going on with Florida, but we just don't want to play rain. We just don't want any rain. Florida's like, I'm done with this. No more lightning, no more bad weather, no more nothing. We're just going to be quiet. We're putting baby in the corner for all intents and purposes. And you switch over here to the total totals, as I mentioned, and if you notice, we scroll through time, and our heaviest accumulation is now down way to the south over the Florida Keys. So God forbid, the Florida Keys could potentially see some very bad flooding from this. You guys might not be able to see those digits, but we got a 5.1 towards Key West, and we have a 4.8 as you head a little bit further to the east-northeast in the Florida Keys. And then we immediately tremendously drop off as we get into the bottom one-third of the peninsula. It looks like our max value is 2.8, right into this little quadrant of the world right there. So very, very interesting. We'll have to see what happens. Our other ensembles are kind of wishy-washy with this. We're looking at the EPs here. We're not looking at the Euro, guys. We're looking at the European ensembles. Ensembles are your bestest buddy, your number one companion, your significant other, your partner for life whenever you're looking at precip. Whenever you are looking at precipitation, you look at the ensembles. I don't care how close you are in time. When you're like within an hour of something happening, obviously you can look at our, deterministic, but ensembles are going to be your number one kicker, that extra nudge that I like to say more recently in determining what your general thinking is for your precip totals. And even here, this is our European ensembles. It looks like we've backed off again tremendously. We could see upwards of about getting into that 3.5 inch threshold, but nothing in comparison to what we were once seeing, and a bit further to the north for that matter as well. This has really been reduced to a southern 1/3, maybe 1 3/4-ish, we'll say, of the Florida Peninsula. From about Tampa, St. Pete south in a more east-southeast fashion, we could see that big old mess of stuff cut across the peninsula. And let me see, do I still have my GFS ensembles up? I thought I had the GFS up. Maybe I don't. We can switch over to it very quickly. Where are we? Boom, boom. HREF. Let's go to the HREF instead then, shall we? See, HREF really is not thinking we're going to see much in the way of big rains. If you look, the HREF has tremendous values off to the south, missing Florida altogether. Again, the Keys are under the gun. So the Shref lines up really, or the HREF, not the Shref, the same thing as our high-res ensemble forecast. Once again, echoes what the NOAA blend is thinking, with a large majority of the Florida Peninsula trying to squeak into that inch threshold, but then down towards the south, especially towards the uppermost, or not the uppermost, the bottommost portion of the peninsula and into the Keys, we could see very localized heavy rainfall. And it does make sense. It does make sense, because if you look back here on the satellite imagery and you do some just careful extrapolation, it looks like our heaviest bands of convection are moving in this general fashion. So a lot of this stuff could miss the Florida Peninsula altogether. And again, this is just preliminary stuff that we're looking at here, guys. If you look, just looking at the satellite image, we have one good pocket of convection, another good pocket of convection, another good pocket of convection, and this stuff isn't going to suddenly get picked up like a tropical system would. It's just going to continue to propagate off towards the east-southeast, and right now, if you just continue it on its current course, it's going to hit the very, very southernmost periphery of the Florida Peninsula. So, I don't know. I'm not trying to say this is going to be a bust. Don't get me wrong. I'm definitely not going there, but we're going to have to watch exactly what these distinct areas of thunderstorm activity do. And you could see a lot of them are really self-sustaining as well once they get over those warmer ocean currents in the Gulf of Mexico. You can see this really flaring back up. Got some really good shear indicated in there as well, really rapidly blowing off towards the east. All these are. That's definitely indicative of our subtropical influence across the Gulf of Mexico. That's what's preventing it from really developing. And by the way, guys, since we were talking about it on Tuesday, our tropical models, our probabilities have completely washed out. They're gone. That's why I haven't really been advertising it. It was very interesting to see that it was hanging on as long as it did. We really didn't squeak too far up the pedestal or the totem pole, but still very bizarre, very eerie. And I'll admit, low-key on the down low, I was a little excited to pull those probabilities up. I was like, this is familiar territory. This is what started the Weather Center, and we're back in it. Looking at the cyclone models and the probabilities. Can't wait to really dig into those bad boys as we get more and more into the tropical season. So now I'll move on to the actual whole overview of everything. So this is our day one risk. This is where we have our slight potential, or no, not our slight, excuse me. I always keep dorking them up. I'm used to just saying level 1, level 2. We have our level 1 risk, which has verified really well. This is one time where I'll say they were more or less right on the money. Maybe they could have excluded a little bit of Louisiana. It does not seem like they're going to get as much of the severe coverage. Maybe a couple of Swiss statements as we go into the overnight hours because our cape is going to dissipate. Day 2, again, coastal areas. We have to watch for NOLA, Baton Rouge, Biloxi, Mississippi, Mobile, Alabama, and then getting into the Florida Panhandle and that southern... Actually, it looks like they did adjust this a little bit. They may have adjusted this. It looks like they are encompassing mainly the Keys and that southernmost periphery of the peninsula. So I am on board with this. I would personally kind of... again, I'm splitting hairs. This is micro scale, not synoptic, but I would kind of just like that. Just a little bit. Little whisper, kind of some falsetto, and that's about it. And then day 3, we see it continue to translate across. It looks like our thunderstorm coverage could stay in the elevated range because as you saw, as the low moves through, what's happening is as it plows through our modified polar high pressure that's been providing us with some good dry conditions, can still feel the dry, cool air coming into my window as I speak. As this low blasts through and we get a lot of that residual moisture that's left behind, not only is it going to aid in the different energy transfers that we see in the atmosphere, latent heat release, latent heat absorption, all that fun sciencey jazz that you guys don't need to listen to. It's also going to open up a pathway for all those warmer temps and that warm advection to come across the Gulf of Mexico and rehabilitate our little bit of cape and buoyancy. And that's why I do think, we could have another little bit of an extended period of potential thunderstorm activity. And then let me click on this. Can we go far enough in time? Yes, we can. And then here's our day 4. Day 4 with our 15 percentile risk. If I, just based off what I looked at earlier, I agree with this part of it. I don't know if we'll see it get that far to the north. We'll see. There's still some time to get ahead of it. This is not until Sunday. And then if I go back just one click, can I get my cursor back? There we go. Thank you. And here's day 5. 100% on board with this. And this is exactly what I was trying to talk about earlier. This is going to have a lot of really good help from the Gulf of Mexico. So I think if anything, this area, everyone who's panicking up here in the Midwest, you don't really have to worry too much. And then on top of that, what's going to end up happening is this system that's going to move up that's affecting us now has the very good potential of creating some heavy snow conditions up there that, of course, everybody who loves snow is still hyping. Winter storm! And it's like, you do realize it's spring, right? I mean, you can technically still call it that. You can technically still call it winter storm, but it's just a storm now. We're not actually in winter anymore per the calendar, like in black and white. But anyways, I don't think we're going to have a whole lot to worry about near the Great Lakes, the upper plains, the upper Midwest, the Northeast. We might have to look at some possibilities of seeing some mixed cold wintry style effects as our first system moves up, and then the next one begins to build in there right behind it. So we're already setting ourselves up for success in terms of where we want our snow to come through. And I think our severe weather potential is going to be our greatest down in through here, just looking at where our shortwave activity is going to move, where our greatest vorticity is, where it is that we're going to have our little jet max at 300 to 500 millibars moving through. So yeah, I definitely can see, if I had to highlight my own area, we'll have to watch for some severe weather potential down and through here, especially if what happens down the road on the Euro does unfold. It looks like we're looking for secondary cyclogenesis, or genesis as I like to call it. I'm trying to stay away from using big words now. But low formation down in through this area. If we get another low to set up and then move off in this direction, some models want it to move off in this direction. I'll show you that here in a moment. That could also make things a little bit more spicy. So let's go over to the European model first, though. I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. Whoops, spoiler alert. I'll show you guys what I'm talking about first on the Euro with these two systems, not only our current weather threat, but this next upcoming severe weather threat. And we'll start down at the surface first. I think there's a giant mosquito trying to get in my window screen right now because of all the lights I have on. That was weird. It's buzzing like right in my ear. All right, so there's our first one, and if you notice, there are two separate lows here. The models are doing a very good job of or in their distinction of the two separate vortices here, and that's really what's going to determine where it is most of our heavy rainfall is going to occur. And as we take this through time, there goes our first one. Look at all that heavy snowfall that could be occurring up there in the northeast, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. We're just not in a very, very ripe setup for extreme severe weather like some people are saying, because if you look, this is all high pressure right here. This is all high pressure getting pulled down on the backside of this deepening low. You have to imagine, instead of thinking about it as a blue H, you have to think about it as a cool pool of water getting sucked down on the backside of that low. And as it comes down and we start to see the development occurring over the front range of the Rockies here, we're already setting ourselves up for, quote, failure in terms of severe weather potential. Because then if you come down across the deep south, if you look at the orientation of our isobars here, we have all this air rushing down towards the south, and we don't really have a very, very good flux of moisture or a good conveyor to refill and backfill where it is we could see our unstable conveyor or our severe weather sector form up. So we'll go just a little bit further in time. We'll go to the 72-hour mark, and you can see we still have high pressure rotating through here. It's going to open the Gulf of Mexico. It's going to try to tap into the Bay of Campeche down here, and that's where we're going to finally get a little bit more of that unstable moisture feed. But notice a lot of the snowfall around this puppy here. That's what's going to be the name of the game with this. That's what a lot of other meteorologists are worried about, the snow. Where it's going to be June, and we're going to have, like, hurricanes out there in the Atlantic, and someone out there is still going to be like, the snowfall, look out, and we're all going to be like, what are you doing? And you go over to the 96-hour mark, and even then here, if you notice, the Euro doesn't have a huge vote of confidence that we're going to see a tremendous amount of very good, shower, thunderstorm coverage up in the Midwest. It's right in through here, and I am definitely on board with this, because now we finally have a bit more of an open Gulf. Granted, it's going to be modified air. We don't have a lot of moisture down there. You can see that there is a scarcity in our green reflectivities. There's nothing down there, really. So we're going to heavily have to rely on our overall just surface buoyancy and whatever moisture this thing can drag across the desert Southwest into the southern and central plains. And eventually, as you get closer to the 5-day mark, notice we get a little bit of additional cyclogenesis. There's like a sneaky low pressure system right in through here. It's not identified by anything, but there's a secondary low that's getting ready to suck up itself across the southwest. Southeast, wow, southwest. It's in the southwest, moving northeast across the southeast. And then finally, at about 156 hours, there it is. You see additional cyclogenesis occurring, and that's what could help to really pull down even more dry air and more cold air and try to cool us off just a little bit. And it depends on how much cool air we have available, because at this point in time, if you guys notice too, our 0-degree line is way up here. So it could be more of like a cool, dry front than an actual cold, bona fide polar front. But you never know. We'll see. This is just speculation at this point. We're almost towards the back end of our European model. And yeah, that could also help to further enhance our risk down across the southeast. So if you look at the way the model is structured, and you took a look at our heaviest precip returns just using this alone, and you shouldn't do that, but just based on what I see in the synoptic scale of everything, it looks like this quadrant right there, I'll draw like a little parallelogram, is where we'll need to monitor for our most severe weather action. Blizzard Vince, Mick and Mar, that's funny. Breaking news, winter storm coming for the hypers. Now shut the shizzle stick. That's funny. Shut the shizzle sticks up. Winter storm dementia. Oh, that one got me. I'm sorry. That one got me. Kevin, welcome in. Good to see you, buddy, down in Puerto Rico. I'm getting really excited to go down there and see everybody. I'm really excited, debating on whether or not I'm going to do full-fledged content down there or maybe just do like a update video or two just to say hello to everybody and enjoy being able to unplug and just take in Puerto Rico and my relatives down there for what it is. But yeah, so, I mean, we definitely still have to monitor this, because if you look at the 18 Zulu NAM, right about where I drew that parallelogram as you get towards the back end of the 18Z run, we do get a little bit of a sudden increase in our SIG-TORN parameters down across Kansas, Oklahoma, and a little bit further to the south. And if I were to switch over to the Theta E on our 18Z GFS, if you notice, we get a little bit, see, there is an indication that we have our unstable thetas all the way up into Nebraska in a nice low-level jet. But if I were to take this and really boil it down, not just looking at the colors, not looking at the wind barbs, not looking at like just the fine statistics. If I were to step away, try to put on my Neo from the Matrix glasses and just see things as an overall picture, our most unstable air is going to be right in through here. That's it. A lot of this to the north, if you notice, is buttoned right up against our cooler, drier theta values, and a lot of it is still going to be modifying out, because look at how across the rest of the eastern United States, we still have modified polar air. So I am definitely thinking, and I don't know why somebody earlier kind of gave me a nice little shot below the belt, I'm going to stick to what the professionals say. And it's like, I'm not saying that there's not going to be any severe weather. What, are you kidding me? I'd look like a complete moron if I said that. But I just don't think it's going to be as huge, as widespread, at least for now. Obviously, of course, what the weather does is going to be totally different. We've had a number of instances where the models have caught us with our pants down, and they've done something 100% different in terms of what the actual outlooks have shown us. But just based on what it is that we're seeing here and reasoning with myself, if we just had a huge continental polar high park itself over the eastern half of the country, all these cold anomalies, then we're obviously not going to have a very, very reputable source for it to suddenly, oh, here's your warm air, here's your cape, boom, and then big severe weather event. We have to kind of fish for it. We got to bait it out of the south. And if you look, a lot of our really, really unstable thetas are almost not even on the chart. They're down here over central Mexico, the Yucatan, and down over the Caribbean. And then maybe getting back up onto the leading edge of this storm system that's blowing through us right now. So, I don't know. I'm still up in the air about how expansive it's going to be. I definitely do think we're going to get severe weather out of that because we just have enough of a synoptic driver. But if you notice, it seems like a lot of it is going to be confined to the Dixie Alley area, and then we finally get that real good flux of unstable conditions as that secondary low vortice tries to get going over the deep south. So we'll have to really evaluate as we get into next week. This is next Tuesday. If we do get a little bit of secondary cyclogenesis right in through here, we could really up our severe weather risk for the Gulf Coast, the Dixie Alley area, especially with that robust cold air advection that's going to be back behind it. So we'll see. We'll definitely have to see what happens. Same thing here. If you look at our 12Z ensembles of the GFS, you can see the shortwave and the jet max that is expected to help provide us with a little bit more of that diffluent flow aloft and that upward vertical motion at all levels of the atmosphere. And it might be difficult for you guys to see, but this is right over top Texas, Oklahoma, southern periphery of Kansas, getting into Missouri, Arkansas, and especially down over parts of Louisiana where they have that designation currently. So we shall see. We shall definitely see. Does anybody, before we switch gears and talk tropics, we're coming up on that last 20-minute mark, so I want to kind of take some questions now if anybody has them. The mosquito right now outside your window with my radio. Yeah, right. Can you talk about wildfires in Virginia? Maybe, Kevin. We'll try to get there. I haven't really looked too much at the wildfires. I do apologize for that. I do know that fires technically are considered severe weather. But we're going to be transitioning here in a second. Cayman's Best, just joined the live chat. Will this low-pressure system reach the Caribbean? I don't think this first one is going to do too much in the Caribbean, but the next one that we were just talking about here, especially if we get that secondary genesis along the frontal line that brings that air further to the south, you guys will definitely see a little bit more of your rain chances, your high wind chances go up for Cuba, Bahamas, Caymans, and Jamaica. Could see it bleed over into the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico as well. I haven't looked that far down into the Caribbean AOR, but it's a potential, especially if we do get as much of a plunge as some of our theta models and our surface pressure models are indicating. All right, I'm going to give it another 30 seconds of questions, and then we will move on. Will Orlando get anything much? So we'll definitely see some action. It's definitely going to be windy and rainy, but I don't think it's going to be anything catastrophic or anything enormous. This is going to be very, very representative of what we saw back in, what was it, I think December, guys, when I went storm chasing and I was out in Tampa, 30, 40 mile an hour winds with heavy rain. Question, when does the wind shear start to calm down? So we're going to talk about that, Kevin, an excellent way to segue the conversation in the live chat. We're going to start talking tropics. And first and foremost, one big piece of the puzzle that I want to unveil to you guys. If you have more questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll get to you guys, I promise. If I don't end up getting to you for some strange reason, drop them in the comment section. Drop me a lot on my Instagram, my X, or my TikTok, like I always plug in there, and we'll talk about it. But check this out. So what we're looking at here, you guys are familiar with this. My longtime viewers are very familiar with this. What we have here is our potential velocity anomalies in the globe, or across the globe and across the tropics. I'll move it over a little bit so you guys can see. And a couple of the big names in the tropical meteorology department are noticing this right here. This here. All these bluish, greenish, teal shades right through there, right over top of most of Africa. And basically, guys, part of the homework I've been doing, what that is called your African standing wave, the ASW for short. And essentially what this means is we're already starting to see our upward vertical velocities switch position from where they were during an El Nino phase. Because as you guys are aware of, or at least if you're not aware of, you're going to get a crash course in it. The reason why El Nino is technically, so I say technically because last year it didn't play by the rules, why El Nino is technically a no-go for our tropical season is not only because of the wind shear, but it's because of the mechanisms that go on in the atmosphere. So we have, we'll say hypothetically, this is our Pacific Ocean, there's North America, here's South America, and then here's the Atlantic Ocean. What ends up happening is we have, during El Nino, our upward vertical motions over the hot waters, and then we have downward forcing and outflow across the Atlantic and our good old wind shear. What happens with La Nina, obviously, as you would imagine, is it flips the script. We have our upward vertical velocities over the Atlantic, and then we typically get our downward forcing over the Pacific. And what this is showing us is we have our African standing wave beginning to take shape. Our upward vertical velocities are already increasing over Africa, which means that the general forcing of El Nino providing us with that exhaust and down rush, or that downward forcing in certain parts of the world, is starting to lift. And this is a precursor to when our African easterly jet, our AEJ for short, begins to start pumping out those African easterly waves. I'm using all these technical terms that I've learned in the hours of research that I've been doing, but essentially, basically what that means is we get a jet stream that forms up in Africa, moves to the north into the tropics, and that's what starts to bloop all of our different easterly waves, or our tropical waves, as we are very familiar with, that form up in the tropics. And some of the bigger names in meteorology are a little concerned at the fact that our ASW is already starting to show itself, when typically this becomes a bit more of a thing as you get to this time in April. Because usually as we roll through the back end of April into May, we start to finally begin to see that AEJ, the African jet, move to the north. We get a little bit of a thermal low, a heat low over northern Africa, and that's what helps to start stirring not only our tropical systems, but the good old Saharan dust layer, the Saharan air layer. And that's what gives us those long, dry, dusty bouts of air moving across the Atlantic. The jet stream begins to kick off, and that's what slowly starts our hurricane season. And so why everyone's bringing this up is this kind of gives us a little bit of a clue as to, could we have early development? Could we have early development this year? Could we have a named system or two maybe in the Atlantic in May? Could we possibly see a bit more activity in June or July, as opposed to just the homegrown systems that form in the Gulf, near the Bahamas, in the Western Caribbean? Could we start to see our African jet and the setup of the monsoon out there try to interact with our hurricane season and create more active conditions faster sooner than later? So that's one piece of the puzzle. I'm still digging into it. It's very hard to find any really solid and reputable research on what the African standing wave really does and what it attributes to. I'm trying to nail down all the different factors and equations to what our African easterly waves do, what the tropical waves look like, how to best analyze and scrutinize though. I'm trying to get to the point, guys, alongside my just weather degree studies. I really want to get to the point where, as I've told people on Instagram in private messaging, where you can come to this channel and get some of the more accurate, realistic, and scientifically sound reports for what could be a very extensive hurricane season. I'm working every single day to try to just nail down the studies. What millibar level should I look at for this? What does the difluent flow in this quadrant of a tropical wave equate to in terms of its potential development? You know, all that stuff. Like, I'm really, really working my butt off to try to get as technically sophisticated and spun up alongside my prior tropical studies with what I know now with general meteorology and tailoring it to a specialty in tropical meteorology. And right now it's funny because I'm not studying anything for the Caribbean. I'm not studying anything for the Atlantic. I'm not studying anything for the United States. I'm studying everything in Africa. I'm studying everything in Africa and India because, believe it or not, the Indian Ocean dipole and the Indian Ocean monsoon, which is something else I want to touch on here. We're going to go back to our climate models in a second. And I'm starting to pick up what the models are putting down, and it makes a lot of sense telekinetically, or not telekinetic, but telecommunicatively, telekinetically. I don't think that's a word, but anyways, telecommunications, teleconnections, that's what I'm trying to get at here. So anyways, let's see, here it is again. If you guys look, this is our European control model. You can see that African standing wave is just intense. You have nothing but favorable upward vertical motions all the way from March through April into May. So it's already slowly but surely spinning itself up. If you come down here, you can kind of get a big picture of it, and it helps a little bit more. Let me see if I can zoom into it a little bit. Let's see here. I'll zoom in just a little bit more. I'm going to have to adjust this afterward, guys. Bear with me, but this might be a bit easier of a representation. So if you look, this is what we're talking about. This map might help make it a little bit more representative as opposed to looking at this horizontal, or I should say vertically oriented timetable. So if you notice, this is where the tropics are kind of most robust, if you will. And this area right in through here, and I'm looking upwards, I apologize because that's where my OBS is. I want to make sure I'm drawing for you guys to see. This whole area is what lifts to the north and really helps to instigate the churning of the winds on the north side of Africa and then churning of the winds on the south side of Africa. And this is what creates our good old-fashioned ITCZ, and that's where your waves come from. And the fact that we already have our upward vertical velocities poised right in through here. Let me clear the ink so you guys can see. Right through here, and then especially right in through here where the the jet stream down there in Africa originates. The fact that this is already starting to establish itself is what has people like, whoa, okay, that's a little early. You typically don't see it establish itself until we're already well into a La Nina phase and things are ready to rock and roll more or less. So I thought I would share that little bit of tidbit with you, that this kind of helps support that theory that we may or may not see a stray spin-up in the month of May, or potentially a little bit more activity than we're used to seeing in June or July. It depends on the SSTs. We might get some cooling between now and, say, May. So that is more and more unlikely, to tell you the truth. Another piece of the puzzle I've been studying. So let's go on over to first our Indian Ocean monsoon. So I've been doing a lot of heavy research in terms of what the teleconnection, that's the word I was looking for. I don't know why I kept on saying telekinetic. I guess I was just making it up. What the teleconnection or telecommunication is between our Indian Ocean monsoon and the way that it influences our large-scale semi-permanent pressure systems over the Atlantic. So let's come on over here. We're going to go over to our preset model. And if you notice, this is valid for March, a very, very big El Nino signature. But notice that our easterly jet in Africa is already starting to poise itself up and lift to the north. And then look at what happens in the Indian Ocean throughout much of our tropical hurricane season. If you guys notice, until we get to the month of November, but from June, July, August, and September, we have very, very, very good indications that our Indian Ocean monsoon is going to be very, very robust with action, which lines up very, very well with the connection between our AEJ, African Easterly Jet, into the tropical Atlantic. And essentially, without getting too caught up in the weeds, the reason that's important is because what that gives us is, trying not to science it up too much. Trying to think of it as simple as possible. I'm having a hard time because I want to get into all the sophisticated terms, but I don't want to hit you with it. Basically, with all that heavy rainfall and the latent heat exchange that's going on with all of our showers and storms associated with the monsoon, it's in the perfect position to where as that air goes up and then rains itself back down like a localized Enzo factor, like a localized El Nino, La Nina kind of thing, it helps to push more volatile air or more buoyant air towards Europe and up into the North Atlantic, which helps to reinforce our North American oscillation, which reflects the strength of our subtropical high, boils down to the surface reflection of the high pressure over the Atlantic, and that's why typically during an anomalous monsoon in India, there is a teleconnection to where most of our tropical sites, not all of them, obviously with a monsoon like this, I'm not saying, guys, that our tropical cyclones are just all going to go west. They're coming at us. I'm not saying that because obviously there's a number of different variables that have to go on for that. But I'm just saying, statistically speaking, in some of the papers I've taken notes on, it's been proven that you get a bit more of an westward fetch with our cyclones because you have that bolstering of our Indian Ocean monsoon supplementing our subtropical high and the overall long wave pattern, or the Rossby pattern as they call it, when you're looking at the entire northern hemisphere of the Earth. So that's also what I thought was very interesting. I wanted to put the puzzle pieces together in terms of why it is a lot of our main climatological models are calling for just extreme activity through the MDR, through the Caribbean, into the United States. And that's probably because our La Nina and our negative PDO, coupled with this horseshoe shape that our North Atlantic SSTs are taking, is just unfortunately, sounds like hype, I know, just kind of taken on a pattern to where you could very well make a case you're going to get a lot of westward tracks, a lot of long track storms out there throughout the duration of hurricane season. That's kind of where teleconnections in the atmosphere across the globe really go hand in hand with one another, and it just kind of looks like all of our models are suggesting that everything is going to line up in unison and drive these systems off to the west. Not every single one of them, obviously, because again, we got to take into account localized influences, micro and mesoscale factors that are going to go into our steering currents. We're talking very, very big picture. These things we can I wouldn't say easily, I'll use the term easily loose, but these are the things that we can really nail down with some confidence what the big picture is going to look like, because we have semi-permanent pressure systems, we have our prevailing wind flows, we have our trade winds, we have our large-scale oscillations in the ocean. These are things that don't just disappear. These are not things that just suddenly go from point A to point Z across the globe. They're always there. They're just going to kind of moderate and mediate a little bit. It's when you get down into the sauce of what is this front going to do? What is this high pressure going to do? What is this low pressure? What is this little shortwave trough going to do? What is this wave going to do? What is the Saharan dust going to do? All that's when it gets a little trickier. But what I've been trying to do is paint a big picture of what the entire globe could be doing to help support the hypothesis that this could be an aggressive hurricane season, is how I'm going to call it. I'm not going to say hurricane season from hell. I'm not going to say this and that, because again, there are very finite variables that no perfect scientist on Earth could really get a handle of, especially on March 21st. But it could definitely be an aggressive hurricane season, far more than what we saw last year. And with these precursor signals like the ASW, the African Standing Wave, our transitions from El Nino to La Nina, we could have a bit more higher-end activity depending on what our Saharan dust layer does over Africa into the earlier months of June and July. We might just see major hurricanes very early during the 2020. Now, honestly, I don't know about major hurricanes. We have the energy for it, but I don't want to start getting into the intensity. I don't want to get into the intensity because that's where you start getting into those smaller scale details, and I'd be lying through the skin of my teeth. I'll boldly say that. I'd be lying to you if I said, oh, yeah, this definitely supports Cat 4 hurricanes in June. Like, no, that's your garbage. That would be entirely unrealistic to promote to you guys. I love your streams. I know more about severe stuff, and I've learned a lot about tropical stuff thanks to you. You are our treasure. Oh, shoot, Alfalfa Bill Enjoyer. Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that a lot. That makes me feel humbly proud. Travis Cranford, welcome in. Doff Boy, I haven't said hello to you. Ryan Levine, thank you very much for joining. Things have been okay. Things have been very busy, very hectic, but we're making it work. It's good to see you guys tonight. Thank you all for being such a spectacular audience tonight. It's been a great time. Let me go to my notes real quick because I know we're coming up on the last 6 minutes of the stream, and I just want to make sure I cover everything. So I was talking RRFS and our mesoscale convective vortex for the tropics. Not really going to go over it too much because we're running out of time, and that could be a whole other 20, 30 minutes of a live stream, but it looks like some of the data suggests that we might see a little bit of El Nino try to hold on at least through to the beginning of April, and then it's going to just crash and burn. Because a lot of our long-range ensembles are showing that our 850 and 700 millibar flow, the trade winds and the prevailing patterns over the Pacific, right over our Enzo regions, are likely to stay out of the west and keep some of that warm water of El Nino in place a little bit longer. And it already is starting to verify. The models are doing a very good job. So that's also what kind of scares me about the hurricane season, is our models have been very, very spot on. If you look at our 3-4 index here, it looks like El Nino is trying to strengthen again, but all that's happening is the warm water that was trying to be pushed off towards the west, towards Asia, Thailand, Australia, the winds are reversing again and just literally blowing that warm water back into place. So that's why it looks like we have our Enzo index trying to climb back up. What's very neat is we finally had one area fully crash and burn. It's trying to come back up, but if you notice, our 1 and 2 closest to South America has completely died. We're not in an El Nino anymore in our Ninos 1+2. Might see it cross that 0 threshold again, but we are officially in the negative anomalies in one of our Enzo regions, so La Nina is on her way. But we're probably going to see it climb for the next 5 to 10 days before going back down. I don't know if it's going to look like Shikra. It might look more like Journey to Atlantis for my SeaWorld fans. It's not going to be a boom, Shikra, 90 degrees straight down for my older folks who still remember that commercial from a long time ago. But it's happening. It's definitely happening. And another thing that some folks are really getting after in all the different things I've watched is the fact that our favorable tropical temps are slowly but surely already making their way north. Our Caribbean is ready. The Gulf of Mexico is getting ready. Bay of Campeche is slowly getting ready. MDR is slowly getting ready. So even the Gulf Stream is starting to look more warm. You can see it even just going off in this direction. It's already starting to show itself. Braden's WC, can you please see my last message with the huge paragraph? Oh, shucks. I haven't seen a huge paragraph at all. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? I don't see it anywhere, Braden. What did you say? Kind of paraphrase it. I don't see a huge paragraph in the chat, unless you mean this one here. I looked at the models, and it's looking more like South Florida, not the Keys. Is that the one that you're talking about? But, yeah, guys, we're going to start cutting the live stream. That's all she wrote. Oh, wait, no. I'm going to leave you guys with one last picture. This right here is what a lot of folks are a little concerned about as well. This structuring, how the subtropics are very, very cold in comparison to the tropics. Because that could also help to really, really, really reinforce not only our rotating anticyclone out here that'll push storms west, but it'll also help to give us a direct feed of where our greatest rising air is likely to remain over the North Atlantic, which means that our MDR is going to become very, very favorable for potential activity. And look at how warm the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico are. Incredible. Braden's WC, I don't see the message then, man. Would you mind leaving it in the live stream comments, please, so I can take a look at it, just so it doesn't run the risk of being deleted or looked at as spam or anything like that? Yorkie Terrier lol, what about the wind and rain that's possible in New England on Saturday? I would say it's very possible because we're going to have our system moving up the eastern seaboard through Saturday and Sunday, rapidly deepening down into a strong low-pressure center, and that's what's going to help to drive that non-convective or winds not associated with thunderstorms and that heavy rain threat. In fact, WPC has a higher risk of potential flash flooding as you go up the northeastern coastline than they do down here in the southeast with that system as it continues to just boil over. So yeah, folks, that's all she wrote. We're slowly but surely dialing ourselves in. We're looking at everything, looking at all the pieces of the puzzle, looking across the globe. And it's honestly, when you think about it, it sounds excessive. You know, what are you doing looking at the Indian Ocean, and why are you looking at Africa and this and that? We're trying to hear if we're going to get hit by a hurricane in the Caribbean or in Florida or, you know, in the Gulf Coast. It's like, yeah, but in order to be a good tropical meteorologist and a good meteorologist in general, you got to look at it like this before you start talking about it like this. And that's like the first thing that they teach you in Air Force weather. You got to look at the big picture before you try to zoom in like this. And that's what Mr. Shane Castle, who has joined us for a few live streams in the past, has mentioned to me is, you know, as an amateur, it's very easy to look at things that are this big. The moment you zoom out and can start looking at things that are this big and narrow it down, that's when you can really become a brilliant forecaster and understand the way things stack, the way things layer, the way things interact. And the teleconnections is the word that I was looking at earlier. Telekinesis. You can start using telekinesis to look at the teleconnections across the globe. So yeah, guys, that's that. We are right at the 1 hour mark. You guys have been a fantastic audience, all 100 plus people. And according to YouTube, we have 1,129 current views. And thank you very much to the folks who donated tonight. It means a wonderful amount to me. Trust me, I'm not going to lie to you. If you want me to begin on a personal note, sometimes these YouTube payments, however small they are, come in the nick of time, and they help out tremendously with things I want to do on the YouTube or prepping for a storm chase. They come in just in the nick of time, so it doesn't go unnoticed. This is not a channel who's just going to take that and be like, cool, I'm famous. No, absolutely not. It makes me humbly proud to work with you guys and talk with you, and I look forward to these live streams. That's why even though my main videos have gone away a little bit, my live streams haven't gone anywhere because I love getting to interact and talk to everybody, and it's going to stay that way. I'm going to probably need some help during the hurricane season because I'll never forget when we had over 1,000 people watching during Hurricane Tammy, and I'd imagine that if we have bad storms this year, we're probably going to have about a number of people watching these live streams. So I'm ready for it. I'm ready to grind and work with you guys. I just might need some tag team efforts to help out every now and again. PM and Florida Man, I'm looking at you. Amongst anybody else who may want to help out and facilitate some additional conversation and helping with the chat. Let me look and see. I believe the CAG season is going to be interesting this hurricane season. It could. It definitely could. It'll only help to enhance it. That's another thing I got to look at too. Now that you mentioned it, April, thank you very much for putting that down. I'm going to make a note of that real quick. Got to start doing my research to fully understand what it is that the Central American gyre is made of. And I also want to start doing more heavy research on the Madden-Julian oscillation, the MJO, because the MJO definitely plays a role in whatchamacallit, in tropical development in the Atlantic and in the Pacific. And believe it or not, in the brief glances that I've taken at some of the actual research documenting the MJO phases and the way it affects the tropics, it's not when it's positioned directly over the Atlantic like some of us have been misconstrued in explaining. It's not. I believe I've read that there's specific phases across the Pacific as it wanders back and forth that truly help to bolster our tropical activity. So we'll see. I have a lot of homework. I had a lot of homework to do. Yes, please, Braden, I don't really have the time to scroll back up. Like I said, if you can just copy and paste it into the comments section of this video, I'll get right back to you, I promise. I know what's going on, Dave. Change filter to see all messages, not just top messages. I see your message. Dave is not posting his personal information. You can private message him on Twitter, X. Yes, please, actually, if you want to drop me a comment or find me on Twitter, X, TikTok, Instagram, whatever floats your boat, more than welcome to have a one-on-one conversation with you and everybody. I've talked to a lot of people, and I still do on a regular basis. Mick and Marley, that's an excellent option as well. I know she's local here in Central Florida, well, West Florida. I'm happy to take on as much help as possible because I truly think that that's what it all boils down to. We just got to work together. We all elevate one another, and that's how we all get better. I'm not getting better by myself to be the best like some of these other channels. I don't know why people are so afraid of brainstorming and talking. But I mean, I guess we're all in it for the bread. At the end of the day, we got to make our bag one way or another, I guess. But when it comes to something like weather, like that's how you learn. Weather, I feel, and a number of other career fields in the world, before I go on a soapbox, I'm going to try not to go on a long speech here, but weather is such a scientific field amongst a number of other things in the world to where I feel like you want nothing but the smartest individuals in the room around you and talking, just listening, just absorbing, just learning. Because on top of the computer models being computer models, you want that physical presence. You want big brains, big names in the weather field who can educate you in their own personal experiences. Shout out to Pete Berg. I don't think he's in here tonight, but he's another wonderful resource I talk to on the down low, one-on-one through text and social media. And I always like to pick people's brains just to get a little bit better of an understanding, take my perception and mix it in with their experience and mesh it all together. Which one, PM? Oh, no, never mind. You're talking to Braden. My bad. But yeah, I'm going to avoid going on a soapbox. I got to get a shower in, and I got one more day of work. Content might be a little intersparse this weekend because I have my next drill weekend with the reserve, so we're going to be doing that most of the weekend. Might take the latter half of the day to recoup, so we'll probably still put some shorts out. Sounds funny. Put some shorts out to dry, throw some shorts in the laundry. I'm just kidding. We'll probably still throw some YouTube short segments out there, and feel free to drop me a line on my other social media platforms. You guys are absolutely amazing. It has definitely been a pleasure. And, if I can be sentimental for a second, for a lot of you guys who found this channel during Idalia, I'm super pumped. Not for the hurricanes and whatever could come our way. I'm just excited. Like, genuinely as a person, I'm excited to join y'all as we walk into what could maybe be a much bigger, a much crazier hurricane season than last year, because we had some good times last year. I'm not talking about like the damage and stuff like that, but I mean just the forecasts, understanding YouTube, our good old tropics talks on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I'm excited. I'm genuinely excited to ride this one out with you guys and go through it from start to finish. Last year we came in a little late. We came in towards the peak, end of August, and we've been going on YouTube ever since. And now we're going to be able to go from start to finish. We're going to start at the starting line of this marathon called hurricane season, and I am so stoked to ride it out with you guys, especially if we get to intercept a big old bad boy or two out there together. We'll see. But yeah, Braden, I'm sorry. I'm not going to put my phone number on here. Please reach out to me on social media. I'm more than welcome to put it in a private chat, but unfortunately, it's not that I don't trust anybody in this chat. It's just it's very technically compromising for me to put stuff like that out there in a public forum. It's just not good. No one should ever do that. But there you go, guys. Thank you all for watching. We're going to go ahead and cut the live stream. I really hope you liked what you saw tonight. We put in a lot of work putting this together despite everything else that's going on in my background. Not an excuse. I still want to continue to work feverishly to give you guys the best content that I can offer and just continue to better myself, to better my communication with you guys, and get us weather aware, as everybody loves to say. Stay weather aware. But yeah, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Thursday night. Be safe out there if you're directly in the path of some significant weather with what's going to happen over the south and the southeast. And with the next system coming up in the beginning and middle parts of next week, we'll definitely keep you updated on that as well. And we will talk to you very, very soon. We're definitely not going to be 100% latent on this channel. We just have a lot of work going on, but it's good work. It's productive work. And I need to remind myself of that because I tend to get a little discouraged and just mentally fatigued. I'm going to try not to. I really aspire to just keep going. Hit that wavelength and hit that stride and keep going. But, alrighty, folks. Again, have a wonderful rest of the evening. Stay safe. And we will talk to you again very soon. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you saw, please like and share this live stream. Consider hitting that subscribe button. Drop me a comment section if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. And thank you for watching. Until next time, this is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.